how most things happen in life, most extraordinary things. And I'd like to, we're going to spend an hour with Stephanie hearing about her story, the chapters of her story, and how together we came up with the My Power of One brand and what it's done in the world and what the future holds for that. I do want to say how I met Stephanie. I want to start with that baby story to begin with. By the way, I'm Sue Vicory. That might be appropriate to introduce myself. MyPowerOfOne.com is our brand that you can go to and see everything extraordinary that we've done. Pretty much all the visual graphics you'll see on the website and or anything else I've done in the last 17 years are because of Stephanie. She's done the majority of my graphic design work since we met. Back in 2005, I had been working on my first film called Homelessness and the Power of One. And I was randomly, as I do, filming through 15 different cities in the United States. And I happened to be in Washington, D.C., filming with the National Coalition for the Homeless. And I overheard a teenage girl from Miami or something like that say, if every church in Washington, D.C. hosted a mentored, cared for a homeless person, there would be no homeless in Washington, D.C. And of course I had no knowledge whether or not that was true or not, but it planted a seed in me. And when I came back to Kansas City after filming there, I happened to be president of my church at the time, Holy Cross Lutheran Church in Overland Park. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to see if that's something our church can do. So I reached out to the local Salvation Army, which is located in Olathe. It was the closest one in proximity to where our church was. Made an appointment to go in and visit with the director or whoever. And I said, hey, here's my idea. Our church would like to maybe get partnered up with a homeless family or homeless couple or something that we could, do some good with. And she says, well, we don't really have anything structured like that. We don't have anything yet set up that is possible for that. She says, but, she said, look at your face. She said, but I can give you a name of somebody. And I said, that'd be great. So she gave me the name and a phone number of Miss Stephanie Tillman. And so roughly a week later, 10 days later, I remember how long it was, I called this phone number. And this young lady answered, and Stephanie was in her 20s at the time. And I said, well, hey, I'm a filmmaker. I'm making a film about homelessness. I wondered if I could come sit with you. She said, sure. So probably the next day or so, I go over there and you were in HUD housing or something in Olathe. You'd been out of the shelter a couple of months or not super long. Stephanie and her family and her two children, her husband and two children were in the Salvation Army family shelter for 4 months, Stephanie?
Yep.
So at the time I met her, she was already been out for a couple of months and they were getting back on their feet. And anyway, so we spent an hour together and I said, here's what I'm doing. I'm making this film and I don't know what we're connected about, but what the heck. And we sat for an hour, complete strangers, in your living room. And then before I left, you said, hey, let me show you something. And we go downstairs and she shows me this vision board that
Arts and crafts time.
It was a large vision board, and it had all these cutouts, and and it was about an activity that she saw that could happen in Kansas City regarding music, as I recall. She can tell me more about it in a minute. And I'm like, whoa, wow. And I kind of left that thing thinking, this girl's talented. She's got talent. Not that I would have any other opinion. But fairly shortly after that, or in that conversation, I said, I think there's some people I know that would like to hear about this. So I, in fairly quick order, sort of rolled Stephanie into my networks, which, were, 20-some years in Kansas City at the time. And I took her to, corporate, high rises and met Tom Bash and, people that we met right off the bat. And I said, hey, here's Stephanie. She's got this vision and, you're just trying to, have a conversation. So anyways, that's how we met. And what happened in that moment was truly magical.
Yes.
And neither you nor I had any idea the implications that were about to come. But here we are 17 years later.
Wow.
You doing the very first podcast, and what has happened in that last 17 years is a magic wand, is it not?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It started with it started with you making the phone call, and then the next step was me saying sure. That was maybe my first magical word, is me saying yes to an opportunity. And from there, it's been, it's nonstop. It is an adventure. I was reflecting on our journey on the drive here, and it was overwhelming to think about all the projects we've worked on, all the people that we've interacted with, all of the lives that we've connected with together. And that was scary for me back then. Straight out of a homeless shelter, what gets me isn't how much we've done, it's the courage that it took that broken little girl to say yes to you to get here now.
Because you told me, you told me early on you're starting to cry already.
I know, stop it.
You told me we need Kleenex in here. You told me early on, Stephanie, like very, very early on, that you said, I don't have friends. I don't want friends. I don't, friends are not for me. Because you said they want things from you. And, that has stuck with me all these years, how easy it is to repel people and keep them out of your circle of no and things like that. But we were relentless with each other.
Yes. I
never let you out of my viewpoint ever in all those years, even though you disappeared from me a few times.
I sure did. I sure did.
You're not getting away, girl.
I was like, I don't need somebody telling me how amazing life is today.
You are not getting away from me ever. So tell us a little bit, to start a little bit on your history, Stephanie, before I met you. I think our audience would be fascinated to know, you're a Midwest girl, grew up in Missouri, and tell us a little bit about the beginnings of your life story.
Well, I think, age 1 through 6 was your normal childhood life, what you typically think of as the American family, And around age 6, everything changed, and there was a divorce in the family, and it broke my world to a place that I didn't even realize it. It's taken me, I'm at 45 now, or 46 now. It's taken me all these years to unravel that, but it was a lot of years of brokenness. I was timelining my life the other day for something, and in part of it, I would just put age 0 through 6, normal life. Age 6 through 25, pure hell. And then it was just chaos from trying to heal from the brokenness that I didn't understand as a child. And
be more specific with us. Tell us a little bit other than the divorce. I think there's a little bit bigger story that people can identify with.
You mean from the early on childhood or the homelessness that happened after that?
Yeah, no, the early on childhood.
Okay. Well, it took a long time. As a matter of fact, I can tell one story of us that I didn't even know. Like, these are the things that we've discovered together. Sue took me to an event quite a few years ago, and if she wasn't sitting in the audience, I would have never, there's nobody else that I would have believed that these words came out of my mouth. And there was a prompt, and they asked, like, how did I feel after the divorce was over, and just as a child, like, what was that wound? And I said I felt unworthy. And if Sue wasn't sitting there, I don't even remember saying that word. I know I said it. But it like just happened, and from there it's been this discovery of where that unworthiness came from. What have I been trying to fill it with? How am I trying to band-aid it? And then what does that look like? And what does my worth look like in this world, to me, to my family, to humanity? So there was a lot of unworthiness at the beginning of my life. That's what I would coin that first chapter. That's
what you paired up with your mother leaving.
Yes.
Right.
Correct. Correct.
I must not be lovable. I must not be worthy enough for a mother who brought me into the world to want to stay, in my world. Right.
And now I'm an adult, and I see this, I understand marriage is hard, and life is hard, and relationships are hard, and people do the best that they can, but you can't explain that to a 6-year-old child and make them understand it. So it put a crack that just stayed for a really long time, and that unworthy void, you can very easily keep filling it more and more and more, where it just, I've been digging out from under it my whole life. I feel like I'm finally there. I'm getting to start the next second half of my life feeling worthy of being me. I don't need to be worthy for anybody else. Like, I'm just worthy.
You're enough.
I'm enough. Like, all of me is enough for me. And that's where that started. But it started a snowball effect in my life that led to drugs and alcohol. And
as a teenager.
Well, actually, I waited until I got out of the house, because there was also a lot of, my parents did the best they could, but I've always been a unique kid. I think that most people would call it rebellious, but unique. I've always had a different, and even whenever I was growing up, I didn't usually get to do the things that the other kids got to do, and it was kind of a result of the divorce. going back and forth from state to state, so you didn't get to do the normal things that kids do during summers and holidays and stuff like that. And so it kind of had an impact on my social connection. You know, I didn't really get to connect with people and do those things. So when 18 happened, that's definitely whenever I just flew off the handle for a couple of years, and I was
Where
like,
did
I'm
you
taking.
go? Did you leave the house and move away, or?
Yeah, I actually I actually moved out whenever I was 17 because I thought that you could do that when you were 17. I heard you could. And I was still going to high school and all of that stuff, and I had never done drugs or alcohol at that point. I was just, I was just trying to figure out life. I just knew I needed to get out and do something for myself. And I remember I actually got, my parents had
This is your dad and stepmom?
Yeah, dad and stepmom had somebody from a drug and alcohol rehab come and pick me up from the high school and put me in intake. And I'd never done drugs or alcohol, but it was a control. It was a.
They thought that that's what was happening.
They thought that that's what was happening, and so that for me, I translated that to control. So that's another thing that I've been trying to break out of. So I think that my two biggest childhood things are abandonment and control that I've been trying to work out my whole life. And it's a whole thing when you're doing that and you've got a family and you're trying to not be that for, you're trying to take the parts that were wholesome and keep those and then get rid of the other parts. And so anyways, all of that intertwined and became a mess because I was kind of out there in the world by myself whenever I became an adult, and I did the best that I could. But it all, I guess, yeah, the rebelliousness started whenever I turned 18, I went to the park and got a pack of Marlboro Reds and just smoked the whole pack of cigarettes just because I could. So I started rebelling from the second that I got out to find me. And
you met Shamari somewhere along the way.
Met Shamari. I have 2 kids now. They're grown, and I met their father in college, and we had quite the lifestyle back then. He was in a fraternity, and this is public knowledge, but he was definitely into some extracurricular activities on campus, and I fell into that lifestyle too. So we were pretty heavy into drugs and alcohol and college and fraternity and partying, and then we had 2 kids during all of that also. So
you got to Kansas City at some point. You were living in and around Kansas City.
Yep, got to Kansas City after he graduated. He was getting ready to graduate, and I didn't think that him and I thought we would maybe be co-parenting in the same city. So I was like, I've got to get to Kansas City so we can at least co-parent because he's from Kansas City.
Okay.
So I moved up here. Yeah, so I moved up here to get the kids stabilized because I knew he'd be moving here eventually. And then from that point, we started trying to do life together for the kids. And then as we started to do life better and right, and we started to get off the drugs and the alcohol, and we started going to church, life took a turn, and then the homeless shelter happened. As we were just getting on our feet, we just couldn't do it anymore on our own. I think 9/11 had just happened, and that had a whole ripple effect. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of it, because he had just graduated from college and just couldn't get an engineering degree or an engineering job because of 9/11. So, anyways.
So that was in 2001.
Yeah.
You were in Kansas City. You were kind of bottoming out.
Yeah.
You had 2 children. You and Shamari were not married yet.
No.
He was just getting his college degree, and you were trying to figure out what next, kind of a thing.
Yeah, he had just graduated, and we were trying to figure out what's next, and then we ended up in a homeless shelter. So that was a whole adventure. Actually, we got married right before then. We got married the week before. It was kind of a decision in the house one day, like, what are we going to do? Are we going to do this? Are we going to try and do this as a family, moving, like, what are we doing? Or we have to go in a separate way, and we made the decision together to do it as a family.
Justice of the peace, kind of a...
Almost. I mean, we pulled
or...
it together at the last minute. We went to the park and found a pastor at the last minute, and it was just 4 or 5 really close friends that could make it. Kids were there. I think that they were 2 and 3 at the time.
Was that right before you went into the shelter then?
Right before we went into the shelter, like 1 or 2 weeks.
Had you committed to the shelter yet, or was it just the timing of it was...
No. Okay. We hadn't committed to it yet. We thought we'd be able to come up with money to pay the rent or fix it or, do whatever we needed to do, and we couldn't. And then about 2 weeks after we got married, I knew something had to change. I mean, we knew we had to go somewhere at some point. So I started calling shelters, and I ended up at the Salvation Army shelter. And they told us that they had a room, and we went out there and checked it out. And So we spent a 4-month honeymoon at the Johnson County Family Lodge, which is a
Was
great
it in
name for a
one
homeless shelter.
room, Stephanie? What was
Yeah.
it like? Was it just one big sort of room with beds in it, kind of a deal?
Yeah, think about it like an old motel. That's what it was like, as an old motel. So the room was probably, it was bigger than 10 by 10, but not much.
Wow.
Basically two sets of bunk beds, 2 dressers, and a little bathroom. So that's
So
That's
4
what was in it.
months in the Olathe Salvation Army family shelter, and then at some point you graduated or got permission to get out on your own.
Yeah.
That'd have to be kind of a scary transition, maybe, or freeing, or
Yeah, it was all of that. I mean, we had worked to get jobs, and I started working as a leasing agent, and he hadn't gotten a job yet in engineering, but he started where he could, and so we were doing better, and we went and found an apartment and got the kids in preschool and all of that. But it was a long uphill battle from the shelter to, well, I feel like it's kind of still, it's been this whole battle since then. It's a lot when you come from that far down
right
to rebuild, and every little bump in the road is 10 times harder than
That's
it would
true.
be for somebody else at a normal level in life.
Got
So,
it.
but at some point we did make the great decision, the best decision that we've ever made as parents. We were living in downtown Kansas City when the kids, right before they started school, and we decided that if we can't do anything else for our kids, the one thing that we're going to do is get them in the best school system that we can afford to get them into. Even if we have to go to the ghetto, we're going to get them into the best one. And Olathe was the one it was the best one that we could afford. Like, we couldn't afford Blue Valley, but we could get to Olathe. And we started in the ghetto, but we got our kids through that school system.
valued education because he had a degree in engineering. At that
Absolutely.
point from, a prestigious school.
Absolutely.
So you guys moved to a HUD housing or whatever in Olathe.
Yep. Actually, we didn't do any HUD after the homeless shelter. We did it all on our own from that point.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We did it all on our own.
So shortly after that, you get a call from a complete stranger,
Yes.
which turns out to be me. Do you
Mhm.
remember that call? Do you remember trepidation around it, or what do you recall about that 17 years ago?
I remember all of it.
Mhm.
I remember being out of the homeless shelter not that long. We had just recently moved to Olathe, and we were in a little duplex. And I had this vision. I loved the Salvation Army. They were the first time that I've seen like a hand outreach, like a kindness. I kind of lived in this bubble of just brokenness my whole life, and I didn't let anybody help me or want any help, So when I saw the kindness from them, it opened me up to want to see more, do more, understand more, and see what gifts I had to help also. And so around that time, I started putting this vision board together, and it was all these things. It was all of these. It was all
sports. It was a big variety of
it was
young people, wasn't it? Teens
Yeah.
or
it was basically an all-encompassing vision that supported just communicating positivity through music and school and a lot of different outlets too. And there was even like a funded homeless shelter that raised money for itself. Like you didn't have to raise money. Self-sufficient. Yeah. So, and I remembered I got to a point where I had put all that vision together, and one day I just said, you know what, I can't do all this. I'm just the kid that just came out of the homeless shelter. Like, it's a great vision, but I don't think I can pull it off. And I remember sitting on my bed that night, and I remember it was one of the few times that I've just said out loud, like, if this is what you want me to accomplish, you're going to have to send me help, because I can't, this is too big for me, and I'm just this little broken girl from the homeless shelter. And I remember that cry, and it was like a cry from my soul that night. It was it was like a turning point, like something has to change.
Yeah.
And then the next day the phone rang. The next day the phone rang.
Wow.
And there was this woman on the other end.
This other little girl.
My name is Sue Vicory, and I'm doing a homeless project. Can we meet? And I'm like, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yeah, you let me into your home, and we didn't probably spend more than an hour together on that day.
Yeah.
And I don't know what triggered the whole, because I was probably in my third year of making the film at that point, and I'd been through 15 cities at that point, meeting, our nation's homeless. So it was towards the end of sort of wrapping on that, and I'm not sure what I saw in you in that moment. It doesn't matter, but it triggered me inviting you into my world, obviously you were local, you know, we lived in the same town, and I thought you were, you know, it's a bigger story than just you and I.
Well, I think I can answer what you saw in me from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time in my life, somebody saw all of me.
Wow. Oh, that's big. Wow.
That's
wow.
from my side.
Wow, that's interesting.
I feel like you walked in and saw all of me that day and was just okay with whatever it was. Just whatever it was.
That's a big compliment.
Yeah, it is.
So what I love about the origins of the brand, My Par One, first of all, after we met, I introduced Stephanie to a bunch of people, and we formed some networks and friendships and stuff like that. But fairly soon after that, well, actually what happened was we sat on a committee together for the premiere of the film,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked you to create some graphics, didn't I, for it?
Yes.
That was the very first project we did together.
Yes, and for those that know anything about me in graphics, woe to that, because that was what started it all.
Mm-hmm.
It was her asking for an invitation, a postcard for the homeless documentary that she was launching, and I didn't know anything about design, but what I knew is that I really loved that somebody believed in me, so
wow.
I didn't even know anything about computers.
That's a lesson right there, isn't
Yeah.
it? Wow.
I didn't know about computers, but I taught myself, and I definitely didn't know Photoshop or Illustrator, but I did Publisher.
17 years ago, things were a lot different than they are in today's, you know, techie tech world.
I figured it out.
We sat on a committee together. We kind of gathered up people locally to figure out this film premiere, which I'd never done before. So it was my first film premiere, and the magic kept happening because our group grew, and we got some news write-ups, and the weirdest thing that happened, Stephanie, during that time was I was in post-production on the film in D.C. because my editor was out there, and Katrina started coming along towards New Orleans, and while I'm in post-production with the film, like 2 weeks away or whatever the premiere, and I'm not done with the film yet, Katrina hits New Orleans, and the word homelessness became an international conversation. So all of a sudden, we're getting ready to premiere a film that, you know, was started just randomly, and we had to put up a second screen. We had people from New Orleans already in our audience, and we flew in from all over the country, the homeless that were featured in the film. Remember that?
It was amazing.
And we had so many standing ovations that night, and you and I were just sort of sitting in the back, kind of like, whoa, what have we done together?
Yeah, like, what just happened? And that was in our first year of knowing each other.
I know.
We've got
First
16
6
plus.
months.
We've got another 16 years on top of that now.
Was 6 months after we met.
I know.
And I'm like 50 years old at this time. I think I was 50 by then. I get up to the microphone, and I said, you know, this is a magical moment, and it was. And we have never stopped since.
Right.
In 17 years between the two of us, we have turned out dozens and dozens of extraordinary projects that you've done the design work for, the websites for, the invitations for. You know, most recently we had the film Original Jayhawker that we just premiered in October. You did that extraordinary invitation, the 3D
the
invitation.
lenticular invitation,
and kind of kept your skills expanding as well, because you got riskier and you got bolder, and everything you turned up for me was like, as we like to call, eye candy.
Yes.
Because we know each other well enough that we know Sue is very visual. And Stephanie likes to tease me a lot with her designs because she knows it's my drug of choice, which used to be Dr. Pepper, but now it's this. So anyways, we met, but what I'd like to talk about is one of the first things we did together after the film premiered is we did a 9-month project in 2 high schools in Kansas City, the My Par One project, and you and I came and sat on the stage and talked to the kids about, you know, your story, and we co-created with high schools on both sides of the state line, J.C. Harmon and Paseo Academy, acts of kind, or was it an act of kindness or something that we did with Restart. Remember that? We all got together at Restart and did something. In 9 months, we sat with those high school kids. That was the first sort of long-term thing that we did together, and the list just goes on indefinitely. But what I'd like to talk about next is, after we met in 2005, roughly 10 years later, I'm in Paris, and the way I like to say it is the universe said to me, Sue, it's time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, for what? And it's like, I'm in Paris, and I'm like, Sue, it's time. It's time to get the brand into the world. So I knew all that time that the power of one, my power of one, was for me. I knew that it was something that needed to come through me into the world. And so I came back from Paris, and I Googled the domain name My Power of One, and it was available. And I'm like, how in the freak is this possible? So, of course, I snatch it up. I go to you and Shamari work on a website for me together. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about how that happened. The first 4 words that we started with, you created the logo, the My Power of One logo. I mean, you were my go-to girl since the day I met you. So talk about the first 4 words. Do you remember sort of our conversation about engage, believe, and so, yeah, talk about that a little bit. That's a pretty big sort of conversation, I think.
Yeah. Well, I remember that you came to me with the idea, as you always do, and you usually do it in small nuggets. I get little 1-liner, like about 3 liners from you with what your vision is, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's she up to? So that's my teaser from you. And I started trying to just wrap my mind around what you were thinking and what you wanted, and I process life. Well, I want to see the steps that it took to get to something. I kind of dissect it. So I sat down and kind of looked back at our relationship, like what was different about this one than the others, or what's different about what made my path successful because Sue was in it, based on if Sue wasn't, you know? And so from that, I kind of, I put the words, I don't know, I guess I put the words in line that you walked with me. And the first one was, you engaged me, and that's a choice. Like, it's a powerful word, and you engaged me, and I engaged you.
With you.
Right,
Yes.
and I engaged with you because we both had a choice not to do that. And for a lot of reasons, I didn't want to, just for my own fear. It had nothing to do with you. It's
vulnerability.
My own stuff, right?
Yeah.
It was a lot of fear. So it was engage, and then it was that you believed in me. And I said that earlier, like it was this, you saw me. It was just this unconditional belief in me, because when Sue says that she was taking me to, high rises in Kansas City and to the top, I had just gotten out of a homeless shelter, and I was doing design and publisher, and I'd never done design before. And we're going up to corporate, and people that are like, I know that they're significant in helping humanity, like Tom Bash, who, let's just say his name again, just because he was amazing. And, and then, okay, so we had engage, believe, inspire, and empower. Those were the words that I felt like were a roadmap to how we interacted and where the goodness came from with us. So you engaged me, you believed in me, then you empowered me by, again, believing me and taking me into those opportunities. And even if I didn't get it right every time, or I lacked confidence and felt like I failed, even if I did, whatever, you were just always right there saying, all right, well, here's the next door. Here's the next door. Here's the next project.
Good job.
Let's keep going, because that's how you grow. So
yeah, that's what you said to me early on, and I've told this story quite a few times. You said, Sue, you engaged with me, and this is, first of all, initially you told me I don't do friends.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want friends because they want things from me.
Yeah.
So at some point, you let me hang around for a period of time, and you said, I want you to know what you've done with me, for me. She said, you engaged with me, you believed in me, you inspired me, and you empowered me. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't mean to.
Right.
I wasn't in set intention, but I'm like, if this is this powerful in a relationship of 2, then I have to own my power of 1. And when I made the homeless film, the reason I named it Homelessness and the Power of One was because I heard across the country, Stephanie, from coast to coast, from Harlem to Skid Row, that one person crossed their paths and made a difference to either take them out of that cycle of homelessness. And so that was like all these taps on my shoulder, Sue, power of 1, power of 1. So I decided to own my own power of 1. And that's why I named, because people said to me, why don't you call it the power of 2? Why don't you call it the, this and that? Because it's owning our own empowerment and our own power. And innocently, if our friendship turned into something so significant that now, Stephanie, we have this brand, My Power of One, that has been around the world and back with people wearing our shirts for the last 8 years.
And you're still empowering them, because every day they walk out and wear the shirt with the word on the front. How empowering is that? You're still sewing those words into people's lives just every day, just by them getting dressed.
So she created for me just the logo for My Power of One, which we've trademarked. And then we went with something very simple for the brand, because I thought, and I'm wearing Angel today at her request. She's wearing Flawless, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But we decided to make one word because that sort of sets the stage for how one can step into that day. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So we started out with the 4 words, and then it grew sort of exponentially over the next number of years. And so then, because I'm a wild, crazy woman, admittedly a wild, crazy woman, somehow I co-created the idea of going on a 48-state tour with the brand. So Jay and I accidentally bought an RV when he was retiring.
Oops.
And we had it brand wrapped, that you did all the design work with the brand, for the brand work for this RV. And I swear to God, within a couple of months, we are on the road.
Yeah,
January,
it was fast.
We start.
It was fast.
We start, and we leave, and we're gone for 9 months, 30,000 miles, all 48 states, 12 acts of kindness, and we have partnered with a dozen community-based organizations, raised thousands of money, mobilized hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but lots and lots of volunteers. And guess what? Because of our friendship, this happened.
Yeah.
And social media, what it is in today's world, it wasn't back then. I'm seeing people in front of the Eiffel Tower. I'm seeing groups of people in front of the Eiffel Tower in Empower shirts. I'm seeing them all over the world wearing this because of our friendship.
Right.
So that is, if anyone wants to sit down on the sidewalk and bawl, that is an incredibly powerful backstory, right?
Yeah. Incredibly.
Yeah, and so our friendship has co-created in 17 years a magnificent amount of positive give back to the world, to humanity. Because for me, my vision is humanity. It's global.
Yeah.
Although we do it one person at a time, one action at a time, one word at a time. And tell me what it was on for your side of the coin with our relationship going through all of that. Because we moved to San Diego, and texting became popular. Hey, 10 o'clock at night. Hey, do you think you can do a poster for my new movie or whatever? What was it like on your side of the coin? Talk about that a little bit.
So I feel like at times, so as I was building your brand, I'm doing life, and I incorporate everything into my daily life, and it was enhancing just every part of my life. So as you're bringing me new projects, I know we were talking earlier about the words and stuff like that, and I was thinking about, what do you have, 80? A lot.
There's 100 and some now.
100 and some now? Okay, I lose count.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that every time you created one of those words, there was something in my life that I could connect back to that. And so as you were over there creating something that was coming to your heart, that some pieces of it had nothing to do with me, some words had nothing to do with me, and you would bring them to me to create, and I got to reflect on my own life and my own growth and my own journey. So I think that we've done a great job learning how to manage our relationship as time has evolved and our projects have evolved. And what I love is that it's just no pressure.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just no pressure. Like, so our relationship is it's the least pressure relationship I have, and I love it. And it's it's one of the most fruitful in so many ways. I mean, I've got so many fruitful relationships, but it's so fruitful because we get each other, and it's really good to be able to just sit like that.
Way scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, in such a way that it's pretty hard to deny that it isn't magical. Well, on so many levels.
That's what happens when you decide that you want to engage somebody, engage humanity.
When you go ahead and let somebody in, and you say yes to opportunities and things like that. So you're wearing Flawless today, and it is a word that I co-created with you. And what we've done over the 8 years is we've co-created words with people around the country for a specific reason. Like, I've got a girlfriend in Sedona, she in Sedona? No, she's not. Santa Fe, that had pancreatic cancer, and her husband and I co-created the word miracle together. And I said, what are Diane's favorite colors? And she's an artist, so he went with turquoise, and so we created a shirt without her knowing, and then we put it into the world, sort of inviting her world into wearing miracle for her, and now she is, walking healthy, woman.
It's a miracle.
So we've got a bunch of those stories, backstories, but we created together, you and I, flawless, because that's a word I chose for you. It's a word that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Is life being flawless, because it kind of is.
Right, and it's a matter of that perspective, because
That's true.
let me tell you, I love Sue, but man, does she I just want to, some days when I call her and I just want to complain, and she's like, oh, isn't life an amazing adventure? And I'm just like, no, it's not today. It's not an amazing adventure, but it really, really is, and the flawlessness of it all is that you just can't spend too much time on the things that seem like major downfalls or major mistakes or major, like Sue doesn't let me spend any time there. Like no time, no rear view mirror.
It's about 15 seconds of whining, and then
I can't even press send on the text anymore. I just have to delete it before I send it to her. That's all the time I get. But
we've had a good time together.
We have.
We went to Vegas together. Remember that we had a trip to Vegas together? You've been out to San Diego to stay with me.
The Barndo is the place. The
Barndo is the place.
It's the place. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's a magical journey, Sue, and it is a flawless journey, and it's a flawless journey through all of the good and all of the bad and all of the trauma and all of the blessings, and it really is how you look at it each day. And you used to tell me early on, very early on, you had 3 things that were before the My Power of One brand that stuck out to me.
Okay.
And that was, this is it. I just told my daughter the other day, like, this is what we have learned, I am passing down, and I told my daughter the other day, I said, definitely the top 2 words that Sue taught me early on were finesse, and no knee-jerk reaction, so the other one was a statement.
Yeah.
And we talked through those, and it helped me to refine my words publicly and to not be so sensitive and to not be reactive, and to pause and process what I'm doing. So that that was huge.
I absolutely love you.
Love you. I mean it.
No, I know it. I mean, and it's bigger than that. I just adore our relationship and what we've allowed each other to be in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like our audience to let's talk about kindness a minute, because the brand really stands for random acts of kindness and putting positivity into the ripple effect of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to define the word kindness to our audience, I'm not sure how I would do it, but I'll ask you that question.
Thanks, Sue.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sue. Well, I think I define it from the lens in which I've seen it, and it is stepping into somebody's world, whether you know them or not, and engaging in them and feeling and putting yourself in their position and trying to understand where they're at, what their needs are. And if they don't know and you don't know, it's communicating that or walking along beside them and just being there and being present. Kindness is basically being present, because if you can be present with somebody, how can you not be kind to them in any aspect of life? It's also, I think, understanding and being curious. Kindness is being curious, because you have to be curious to be kind. Otherwise, enabling can come out. If it's you've really got to dig deep. Like you've got to dig deep. You've got to dig deep about why you're doing what you're doing, what you need, and what your relationship is to that other person, and make sure that it's a win-win relationship across the board. And that's one of the things that we've done well at a win-win relationship. But
we have, yes.
I think that kindness is, it's moments of opportunities that you get to engage in humanity and just be present and be the reflection that you needed in your life at whatever time that they're at now. That's it. It's the opportunity to be a reflection that maybe you once needed or you might need in the future. And
I look at life a lot as being just a reflection of who I am in the world, because you notice things that are parts of your soul.
Yes.
And that's probably what I noticed in you when I first met you, was creative energy that needed an outlet. And boy, did I give you one.
Yes.
Over the years. But it wasn't a one-way street. It was a
Absolutely.
two-way street that we respected and honored and allowed each other to blossom.
Right.
Because of
Absolutely.
our individual gifts in this world. And it's just been absolutely magical experience from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for, gosh, just being in this world and having someone like you that can put a visual stamp on my visions,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and others. You know, I'm obviously not the only one. You did start a company in
Mm-hmm.
Overland Park fairly early on, and you had a lot of work
Mm-hmm.
locally to do. And
Yes.
you did that for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I have some other fabulous questions that I'm going to ask you
Okay.
now.
Okay.
How about that idea?
Okay.
Let's talk about legacy a minute. You know, you've got 2 children that are grown. You're a grandma now.
I'm
both
grandma.
grandmas
Yes.
now.
Oh my gosh.
And in love with our grandsons.
It's the best.
So at this stage of life, you know, with the next generation coming along, and no one's ever asked me that question, so thankfully I don't have to answer it.
Thanks, Sue.
That's why I'm the host. What's your legacy look like, Stephanie? Because you're 46 now.
Mm-hmm.
I've known you 17 years. You know, you've got children and grandchildren. What does a legacy look like for you? Because it's sometimes being intentional about those actions and those leave behinds is not unwise.
Well, I will definitely leave my family in a more healed place than it found me when I was born.
That's good.
And what I lived. I will definitely leave it. My children and my grandchild will have a better starting point, a better foundation. And I'm not talking about finances. I'm talking about wisdom and mentorship and communication and walking with them through problems and networks and just, you know, I'm not somebody that thinks that your kid's 18 and they're grown. I think that there's lessons in life forever and always. And if they allow me to walk with them, then that's what I'm going to do. It's definitely a legacy of it's educating and it's mentoring and it's starting with my children and moving down and moving out into all of my networks and stuff. I want to take
real
and getting real. And that's my thing lately is I realized that for a lot of my life, I was what everybody else needed me to be. And now for the first time in my life, my kids are grown. I get to redefine my whole life. So I've spent the last couple of months doing that, just tearing everything down and getting rid of every single thing that doesn't serve my greater purpose. And that way I've got space to welcome whatever's coming next. But it will be a healed legacy, and it will be for the betterment of my family, but not just my family, but for humanity, because what I pour into my kids and what I teach about life, they're going to go out and do the same thing. And that's what I want. I just,
it's just to leave the next generation or generations
more healed than I found, than it found me.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of courage. It's risky, you know, because, you know, the vulnerability aspect of it and stuff like that. And you could have stayed where you were at, you know, 10, 15 years ago, but you're choosing to rise and expand for all that Stephanie's meant here to do in this world. And all I can say is I'm sure there's lots of other customers besides me, but I absolutely love our chemistry that we have and our knowing, understanding. And as you know, I had a longtime editor, Mario Cooper, who had a similar relationship with me, and I could just say, hey, here's my idea, here, have some footage. And he'd create, you know, his magic wand would just like come back to me. And
but isn't that all what we're longing for in life? Like everybody's longing for that, and we're just not taking the courageous steps to step into lives. I mean, we started reflecting each other's hearts. I mean, they probably already reflected each other's, you know, the more we were together, the more we were confident in who we were, because we're not the only ones out here doing this or doing that or doing good, and you're connecting and you're just,
you know, and you're enjoying it. You're feeling good about it. Your passions are being taken care of. And you're doing it with teams and with networks and other people, and you attract people that are doing the same thing, and it's just a never-ending ripple effect of good.
That's it.
And it's like not that hard.
It's the connectedness. Gotcha. Yeah, because the isolation. I mean, I built a lot in isolation in my time too, and what I love about what we built is the connectedness of it all. That's
true.
It's not
connecting the dots of humanity.
It is.
And the hearts and the heartbeats of the heartbeat of the generations. I mean, it's really, again, it's doesn't cost anything. it costs a little bit of boldness and a little bit of bravery and all these words that we've put into the brand over the years. All right, so the legacy one, you did a good job on that, because I know I gave you that one ahead of time. What does the next chapter or chapters look like for you, Stephanie? Or are you like me and you try not to think about it and you just like let things come along and say yes to things?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I have purposefully cleared my plate the last couple of months, completely cleared it, so that my birthday was just a couple weeks ago, and I'm turning 46, so I figure that's my defining line in life. Since I've got this opportunity, I'm going to take it. So right now what I've done is clean my plate. It's just completely open, and in the next couple of weeks I'm looking at the projects and the opportunities that I have, and I'm deciding for the first time in my life which ones I want to take on that fit into my next stage of life.
Yes and when
Yeah,
to say no.
when to say yes.
Yeah.
Before I just said yes to everything, and
Right.
now I'm going to say yes to what serves me and others to the best of my abilities. And I'm going to do the things that serve me and serve humanity moving forward. So it's a clean, what I'm giving myself for the next 45 years is an amazing journey of whatever's coming, but I'm going to know what I don't want, and I'm going to know what I do want, and I'm going to fit it into that future.
Sure, and then be present for
Yes.
surprises and invitations that are unexpected and things like that.
Yeah, like coming to Kansas City for a podcast.
That's right.
It's amazing.
We picked a perfect day to
We
do
did.
that, and so the kind of products that we have on our website, www.mypowerof1.com, all the kind shirts and products that we have, we're going to have a coupon for a discounted, so we can get some kind words into the world.
Okay.
And the podcast, we will have on all the podcast platforms starting hopefully in the next week, or when we can figure out how to get it done. And we're actually, Stephanie, over the next 11 months, we're having 11 guests that from all over the country that will talk about different and inspiring things. But our goal is to have a sort of a conversation about the magic of kindness with the world, globally speaking. So any of our kind products, we will, I cannot read that far away. She'll have to bring it closer to me. Oh, she'll give it to Stephanie.
Oh, challenge of the month. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Oh, man. Oh, yeah.
And then together, one of the things I want to do before we wrap up is co-create with you an invitation to our audience for something doable, something that can fit in the day-to-day activities of anybody's lifestyle, that we can generate some more kindness and have a ripple effect into humanity, which is what we stand for. So let's have a conversation about what could that be that would be doable, that we could see actually some results from, maybe.
Well, I think a lot of what we were able to build just started with a 1-hour conversation over coffee at a coffee shop.
That's nice.
So I think that it's having the courage to either reach out to somebody that you think that you could possibly mentor, to somebody that needs a conversation, just somebody that needs a conversation and a boost in life. They just might need a little boost. And if you're the person that needs those conversations, then to have the courage to reach out to somebody that could have a healthy conversation with you and redirect you. I mean, we've built an amazing friendship, but you are definitely a mentor. You are still a mentor to me. And I think that if people can just have the one inspiring conversation with somebody that's been there before, or can just speak some words into them, I think that that's the courage that I would love to see, is just one conversation, one coffee with somebody that you don't know as much about their story as you'd like to, or you think you know, or you want to know more, and just see where it goes.
Yeah, so the challenge or the invitation to our audience is maybe to reach out to somebody in their peripheral network and invite them for, maybe in my world would be ice cream, but invite them for coffee or tea, or an hour chat, because what's so interesting about that is sometimes when you think you're like reaching out to someone for their needs, what it turns out to be is a reciprocal thing. So, you're sometimes gaining more than you're giving. So that's what's so magical about it. So we're going to invite our audience to randomly, because I love the word random, invite someone in the network to a coffee setting, ice cream or whatever it turns out to be, and just with no agenda.
Right, exactly.
Maybe just to come and just to hear talk about life.
Exactly.
And then let it
just
go.
To be present.
Yeah, to be present and hold space for whatever it is.
Exactly.
And so that's as simple and doable as we can possibly imagine, and I love that idea. Oh, here's a good one. You have any questions for me? That I'm brave enough to do that is actually pretty stunning.
See, I know. I wish you would have told me you were going to ask me that sooner. I could have came with a whole list.
I know. I like things on the fly, you know. What questions do you have for me? What question do you have for me? I'm giving you one.
Okay, so all the words that you already have. I guess, what is your word for... I'm restarting the second half of my life, and I know that words change daily, weekly, monthly, whatever, but if you had to put a word on the second half of your life, what would it be?
That's a super good question. As my children and loved ones would have birthdays, I would create a word for them because I can. And so at one point, my daughters created a word for me, and it was the word bliss. Because I choose to live in bliss as close to 24/7 as I can. And I was probably living on the ocean at the time, so, that made sense. But bliss was the word they created for me. If I look at my soul from the inside out, someone told me recently in Mound City that I'm random. And that's for you, Tree, because you told me that at the coffee store. And I thought, yep. He's got my number. I am random. My editor of a long time told me I was crazy, and I'm like, yep, he's got my number, because I wander through my life from adventure to adventure, and I love not knowing. I love learning, and I love just the surprise of life, and that's how I perceive it. That's my lens. I see it as one remarkable miracle experience after another, and therefore, when that's my belief system, that's how life shows up for me. So if I had to give, after all that blabbing, if I had to give one word to the second half, the final third of my life, is that what you're asking? I'm gonna throw the word random out there.
Okay.
Because I like to feel that things are not premeditated, and that there's surprises around every corner. And that if I'm adequately looking, then miracles are available to me every hour of every day. Yeah. So that's my belief system that supports everything else. I did want to talk for a minute about. Looks like my producer over here, Katie, has another note for us. What does it say, Stephanie? Can you read
Intro for next month.
Oh yeah, thank you.
So Sue, tell us about next month's guest.
Thank you. So we are very honored and privileged to have our 12 guests already lined up. Stephanie got to be our very first and most special guest so far. Next month we have Tony Garcia, who is out of Fort Collins, Colorado. And I'm just super excited to spend an hour with Tony. He is just retired as an educator for 30 years. He has published 3 books. He's inspirational in nature. He has run, get this, 20, and I'll say it again, 20 marathons.
Wow.
And something like 7 Boston marathons in a row. So that is, and I'm getting ready to I'm training for a half marathon coming up, so he and I will have some things to talk about. A lot of my creatives are writing books or wanting to publish books, and so we'll have some good questions for that. But Tony is going to be my guest in February. All of our podcasts will be uploaded and able to listen into perpetuity on all the podcast platforms, and we'll get that done here in the next week or 10 days. mypowerof1.com will have links to that. You are actually working on a banner for me.
Correct, yep.
For the website.
Yep,
and
it's almost finished.
The extraordinary, and I mean extraordinary, visual that you made for the Wizard of One. The only thing I added to it was the blue butterfly.
The blue butterfly, yep. And you've asked for that on the last few projects, and I need to just get used to it now because and I love that it's significant, and that's the most recent challenge that Sue's given me, and I love it. I love it because I'm always out and about, and sometimes I do have a whole lot going on in my life, and my last challenge that she's given me is look for the blue butterfly. So my eyes are always present and peeled, looking for that blue butterfly. It's a fun adventure. It's it's fun to be looking for those
see,
things.
Look at how your verbiage has changed.
Oh.
It's a fun adventure.
Well, it's the
she
second
just
half
said.
of my life, baby.
Yeah.
It's all different now. I told you we were doing it differently the second half.
Well, and her son, Isaiah, who I've known since he was 4, I think, is now a father himself and lives in Houston, correct?
Yes.
He's in Houston. He did the animation of the butterfly on the graphic design just recently, just in the last week or two. So we have an animated butterfly, blue butterfly.
And that's what all this is about, and that's what I love most. I just want to say it again. You asked about the legacy, but watching how my son is raising my grandchild based on the way that we interacted and the lessons that you taught me, that's what it's about. Like we can have this ripple effect in humanity, and that's so amazing. But I see the impact and the words and the belief that you put into me. I see it oozing out through my son into my grandchild, and that's what I'm in this thing for. Like that's powerful. It's generational
that's what
change.
I call worthy.
It's generational change. Yeah,
Right.
it's
So
good stuff.
Unworthiness got kicked to the curb.
Gone. That's
And only flawless is the word of the
Yeah.
future. So we're getting ready to wrap the very first ever podcast for the Wizard of One. Absolute honor and a privilege. I did bring Panera scones today because you and I used to meet. We met with Tom, we met with Norm, we met with a lot of our people having coffee, just like you talked about, and eating scones or at Twister's for ice cream. We've had such an extraordinary...
people are hungry for those conversations. We're in an isolated world. You just don't know how much you could change somebody's world just with one quick conversation right now. It could be life-changing. Yeah.
Well, I'm absolutely privileged and honored to have had you today and on the podcast. We've done so much together in the last 17 years. I can't even imagine what the next 17 looks like. And then what a great start to the Wizard of One. Yes. Tony Garcia will be with us in February from Colorado. We've got a great lineup, which I will have on the website. All of our individuals from all over the country. We've got Tracy, who's going to be talking to us from New York State, and Chevy, who's going to be talking to us from California. We've got people from all over the U.S. that will be on the podcast. But thank you, Brad Burrow, for allowing us to be in Real Media today. Your studio is top of the line here in Kansas City, and our friendship goes back quite a ways. I think we're about ready to wrap. Any last comments? You got about a minute and a half to say anything to our audience that you would like to leave behind as a thought-provoking sort of statement of belief.
I guess I just
pass
the baton. Right. I guess I just want to say that just as powerful as one word is, just one human and one conversation, that's what it's about. And we are all connected, and we can change the climate of what's happening in our world if we just start within our own networks and we start believing and engaging and empowering and loving and just connecting and communicating again. And man, what a ripple effect you can have if you just get engaged in somebody's life. I mean, that is the moral of our story. It's it's so far beyond me and you, and it's so far beyond our brands, and it's so far beyond it's immeasurable. In 17 years, what that one phone call did for our lives and others, it's immeasurable.
That 1 hour we spent together.
1 hour. So so I just go back and reiterate the challenge. Just for whatever reason, pick up the phone to anybody and just have a conversation. Just have a real life conversation and let somebody know you believe in them, and ask how they're doing, and just see them wholly and see them fully, and you'll be surprised what people will give back to you if you're just willing to love them exactly where they are.
Thank you very much, and we will see everybody. Everybody can hear us again in February with Tony Garcia. MyPower1.com.